Welcome, Manuel Flores, one of our kind of first guests on the show, and you're out of Tucson, is that
Yes,
right?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And is it okay? The name of the school, Daimyo or
Daimyo
Dame?
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay,
Daimyo.
Daimyo. I said it right the
Yeah.
first time. Awesome. Well, we're super excited to have you on the show. I've been wanting to come out and see you, but we'll do this for now.
If we
It's
can't get
on
you
the
here
list.
for the jiu-jitsu, we'll get you here for the food. Either way, you're
Okay.
coming. You're gonna be
Yes,
here.
you're right. You're right. All right, cool. So, are you in the school right now? You're doing this in the
Yes.
school?
Yeah.
Cool. I love
It's
hearing
the
that.
quietest place I could find. Yeah. We got a little wall
That's
pattern
fair.
here.
Okay. All right. So, just gonna ask you like 10 or so questions, get to know you a little bit and the school. So tell us with the very first question, how did you get into jujitsu? Everyone has their own story. How did it all start for you?
So I started wrestling when I was 12 years old in Mexico.
Cool.
And a few years later, we ended up moving to the US. So I wanted to continue to wrestle, but I spoke no English. So the coach and I mean, everything that was happening around me, I couldn't grasp what was being said or the instructions. And then also being an immigrant,
Hmm.
immigrant life is going to happen to you where you have to start pitching into the economy of the family. So I ended up quitting wrestling, but I picked up kickboxing. And so I kickboxed for about 3 years, won some
Hmm.
good titles. And then, but wrestling was my first love. And it's something that I wish I could have done throughout my entire, life. And
Hmm.
then, just like everybody else, I saw the first UFC and I saw the Gracie family walk out and the gi and the effectiveness of what they were doing
Hmm.
compared to other styles. So at around 2000, in around 2000, I found an academy here in Tucson, and I started training, and I've been training since the year 2000. And the cool thing about it, it was like nobody was a black belt. There were no black belts around. I think my instructor got his purple belt shortly after I started.
Wow.
And it was crazy because I remember watching like Pride Ultimate Fighting, right? Or Pride FC or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And I remember what a big deal it was that Vanderlei Silva got his blue belt. I mean, a blue belt was a killing machine,
Right. Right.
back then. So that's how long I've been around the sport. And everybody, it's to me, it's
Yeah.
so amazing to see how many people are into the sport now and how many people love it from so many different walks of life. But
Right.
to me, I always remember that time fondly where it was like a blue belt was it, man.
Yeah. Right.
So
All right. So I didn't know you had some wrestling experience here, so that's not fair.
it
That's
saves me.
that's
Whenever my jiu-jitsu fails me, my wrestling is there to save me. It's all
nice.
right.
Awesome. So tell us how you got into just like teaching in general. How did that start for you?
You know, I've always wanted to compete. I wasn't a kid that loved fighting. I never loved fighting, but I loved competition. To me, it was like a puzzle that I wanted to figure out, you know?
Mhm.
So I always enjoyed competition. And to me, obviously, was going to be, even when I was in Mexico wrestling, I was going to pursue wrestling as a way of providing for myself. As this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But in whatever room I was in, whether it was wrestling, whether it was kickboxing, and then it was jiu-jitsu, I found myself being put in the position of coaching.
Mhm.
Like my coaches would always give me a little section of the class and, go teach
Right.
those guys, go help those guys. And then I realized that I had an ability for connecting with people, figuring out how is it that I needed to present technique for people to grasp it, and I just ended up falling in love with it. I really enjoy it. And I think more than anything, it's like I love the psychology of teaching and getting people to grow.
Right.
Through jujitsu, but also it's not just arm bars and chokes. You're teaching people how to how to think better about themselves, how to think better about the world and their
Mhm.
relationship with it. So I just love that. I love that. To me, it's what gets me excited.
So you're totally doing what you love, teaching and in jujitsu. So that's what you
Absolutely,
do
yeah.
full time, right? That's
I
it.
do. I do. This is what I love doing. I left the police department in 2018,
Oh
and
wow.
And to me, this is what I love doing. Like my life is about, I wake up, I have some coffee, I read some books, and then I study jiu-jitsu and I prepare for the day, and that's
That's
it.
so cool. Love to hear that. That is awesome. Um, do you compete at all? Or
I
is that
do. I
okay?
do. I feel that for the time being, it's come to an end. I do have some pretty significant injuries
Hmm.
that are stopping me from even rolling. So I am taking some steps into trying to fix those things. PRP, stem cells.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm just focusing on quality of life and being able to be there for my students.
Right.
Be there, be able to perform the techniques, show them, mentor them, be there for them as a coach. Last time I competed was 2022, I believe, and I was paralyzed for like a week and a half before the tournament. So
Why is that? What happened?
so it's a combination of things. Ultimately, it's disc herniations.
Oh
Then there's some
gosh.
problems with like my hips, the way they sit. So it's grinding into a hip socket, and then my disc are not only herniated, but what do you call it? Fusing.
Yeah.
So all that space that your nerves travel through, it's being crunched down. So ultimately, like I could feel it at the end after one of the practices, one sprawl too many. I got up and I was like, oh, okay, I'm done. So bowed out, drove home, and got showered, got in bed, and the next morning I couldn't move my legs. You know,
No
so
way. Oh my
and I
God,
was
goosebumps.
bedridden for about almost a week and a half. Got my legs back a couple of days before we had to leave for Florida, and then I'm sorry for Vegas, and then I got to do one competition class, which was more about testing my movements, see what I could do.
Mhm.
And then I went out there and competed, and then I won my first match, but I was very hesitant. My second match was a lot tougher,
Yeah.
and I ended up losing to a referee's decision. But I was so afraid of a scramble because at the same time I'm in Vegas. We're gonna be there for a couple of days after, and the last thing I want to do is ruin it for everybody around me and just me being like bedridden, have people be concerned. So I was very hesitant as far as like pulling the trigger on some sweeps because I'm like, this is how I ended up getting hurt last time. So
Right, right.
but like I said, I'm doing everything to try to correct those injuries. I think as a coach, people are also watching you how you carry your
Mm,
your burden with grace. Like if
right.
you stub your toe and you're like, then you're
Right.
not a very good example for your students. But if you can show your students, it's like, hey, I have a student that it's going through the same thing with me. But I'm like, hey man, like
Yeah.
do what you can. So that's
Wow.
so I don't know. So maybe in the future, once my back feels better, I'll get back on it. But yeah, no, I
That's
competed in Masters, Worlds, competed in Pans, competed in U.S. Nationals. I
nice.
competed in the very first AZBJJF tournament.
When? Where was I?
Uh it was Gustavo's first tournament. That's when I
Oh,
met
oh, that was
Gustavo.
the first. Okay, yes, I
Yeah, it was the
remember.
first AZBJJF tournament.
Gotcha. Okay.
It was at the old Arizona Combat Sports. I
Uh,
fought in the ring, and then I fought in the mat next to it. It was
okay, we
I.
got to
It
see if we
was.
could find the video. I need to see
There's got to be
it.
video, but it was so hot you didn't need to warm up. It was so
Uh-huh.
terrible hot. You just sat
Yeah.
there and just started sweating. So you're like, I don't need to
Ugh,
warm up. Yeah. So
that's
I've
amazing.
done a lot of competitions. So and I enjoy it,
Awesome.
but like I said, for now it's in a pause.
Right. Totally understand that. And that's kind of like what you sign up for too. I mean, if you have a black belt in jujitsu, you had to have some sort of injury at some point. It's just a given. And
You
even
do.
not just jujitsu, any sport in general, like you can get hurt doing anything. So,
I'll share a story with you.
yeah.
I've had two shoulder surgeries, and when one of the last consultations that I had, my oldest son was with me, and we had to wait in the lobby for a little bit. And there's some gentlemen like their 70s and the 80s in the lobby, right? And everybody, all these old guys, they're moaning or groaning because things hurt or they're moving around.
Mm,
And we're done with the consultation. I'm walking out, and at that point we had to see if I was going to have that second shoulder surgery. Turns out I did, but I noticed that my son was like deeply affected by this, and I was not aware that it had affected him to that degree. So
Mm-hmm.
I give him a hug and I said, "What's going on, man?" And then he gets a little teary eyed, and he says, "I don't want you to. I don't want you to keep getting hurt, and I don't want you to have surgeries."
Oh,
I know he's both of my kids are beautiful, beautiful hearts. But I said, "Hey, man, did you see the older guys in the room? Yeah. Did
yeah.
you see them moaning and groaning? Yeah. Okay. We're all gonna get there. We're all gonna be old. Things are gonna hurt. Things are not gonna work.
Yeah.
The difference between us is that we lived a life worth telling. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, I have this adventures, or I was able to compete next to both of my kids and my wife. So, I'll have those stories. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
can take that away from me. So it's just living a life worth telling. So, but
Thank
yeah,
you.
but jujitsu, it's not a safe sport. You can make it as safe as you want, but at the end of the day, it's
Right.
it's combat. So
Yeah, I mean, not, I mean, this is your show, but like to share something about me too. Like, I broke my leg in jujitsu and I wasn't even like rolling or anything. It literally, the guy just like rammed into my leg and then like that
and
was it.
those,
I needed
right,
surgery. So it can happen just like warming up, it can happen
right,
anything. Like, it's just, it's a sport like anything else. So,
right. And,
unfortunately,
and thank you for sharing that. But that's beautiful, right? Because you had to make a decision whether this
right.
was
Yeah,
whether this was what made you run away from jujitsu, or
exactly.
if you had discovered something that you were so passionate about, you were going to stay in it regardless what how.
That is
So
100% true because when I broke my leg, my mom and everybody else was like, "Are
what are
you
you
gonna
doing, man?
stop this finally? Finally? Like, is this?" And then
Yeah,
it's like, "No, you don't understand. Like, I love this. I love
yeah.
this, and I can't just stop doing it."
Right.
And
You know
so,
what it is? I've thought about why it's so hard to share what jiu-jitsu means to us. And ultimately it comes down to this. How many people discover their passion in life and get
mhm,
to do it? Some people do things that they
very,
like.
mhm,
Some people do things that they're good at. Some people
right,
do things that they have to do. But you have something that you're passionate about,
right,
and you discovered it. How blessed are you? How blessed am I? And how blessed is everybody that practices to say, man, I found something that makes me better, that makes me smile. And that's
absolutely,
jiu-jitsu. And that is why it's so difficult to explain to people. I know I had surgery, but trust me, as soon as I can, I'm back. And they don't get it, because
yeah, I know
unfortunately they don't have that passion.
exactly.
They
I'm
haven't found it.
100%, 100%. You
Yeah.
just gave me goosebumps because it's like, it's so awesome to hear it from other people too, that like you're not crazy, you know? So,
No, no, it's just you're lucky. You're blessed. You're not
right,
crazy, but
right, right.
you're blessed.
Awesome. All right. So, there's a common quote out there that says that everybody that does jujitsu should compete. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, I think that I agree and disagree,
Okay.
because the pros of competing, in order for you to compete, there has to be so many things that come together, right? Um, to be a good competitor, you have to have your diet, you have to have your strength and conditioning,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have your combat training, right? Your
Right.
wrestling, your jujitsu, your submissions, an understanding of the sport that you're playing, right? Do you understand the rules? That's part of being a good competitor. And then on top of that, you have to have a mindset that allows you to take all of that in. And when you have a first time competitor, all those things have to appear. They're going to be in their infancy, but they have to appear. And you have to start helping them how to grow each one of those components so that they continue to not only compete, but have a good experience in it, right?
Right.
So for me, competition gives you so much in the sense of it'll show you who you are at this moment, it'll show you what you can be in the future, and it'll show you the path to get there. Um, but at the same time, if I have one of my students, man, that if you draw him, he makes like Captain America. Remember when he came out of the capsule?
Yeah.
Steve Rogers, yeah, of course he do. Yeah, but Captain America, he comes out, right? Okay, he makes Captain America look small. Like this dude, if you draw him, one of my students, he looks like a superhero. Like this is the guy that should be doing jiu-jitsu.
Uh-huh.
But he's an attorney, and he has a very involved life with like all like he has like 5 kids, and he
Right.
has 5 or 6 kids, and he is very involved with all of his kids. And the second he gets home is about that family life,
Hmm.
about that involvement with them. He is very prolific in his career, and he only trains in our 6 a.m. class, which is a 1 hour class.
Okay.
It'll be very difficult for him to change the entire structure of his life, for him to compete, right? So do I hold that against him, or do we judge him differently because this is what life he has, and he works for
Mhm.
him, and he makes everybody around him happy, and yet he's still doing the one thing that he loves, that he's so passionate about, which is jiu-jitsu. So it would be unfair for him to feel like he's less than for not competing.
Right.
However, I do feel that competition does bring you a lot of growth. When you're talking about like what competition proves, it proves you your ability to stick to a plan, your ability to commit for months or weeks to a training camp, to say no to things, whatever your demon is, right? Whether it's chocolate cake at night, or a beautiful whiskey on a Thursday night, I
Right.
don't know what your demons are, but you have to start learning how to say no, and you have to start looking at the big picture, where you've made a commitment that in 3 months from now, the best version of you is going to step out on the mats.
Right.
Um, and you only learn that by making a commitment to something as big as competition, you know?
Right.
So I feel that if your life, and you have to be very honest with yourself, because like I think as instructors, I'm not going to go through your social media going,
Mhm.
hey man, you could have been training. Okay, here's more
Right.
club
Right.
picture.
Right.
We're
Right.
not going to do that, but you have to be honest with yourself whether you're running away from a greater version of yourself or a greater challenge. But if you can, you should do it. If you can't, respect your life, respect those people around you, and just give your best in class. But yeah,
Absolutely. 100%.
not everybody's a competitor.
That's true. And it's so like you can't just sign up for a competition and hope for the best. I mean, you can, but do you want to do it that way?
Give it
No.
the no,
You know?
but
Like,
honestly, that's what competition also shows you.
mhm.
Where I can't tell you how many times uh, my students step off the competition mat, and like their first words are like, "I get it,"
Yeah.
like I understand why
Yeah.
we drill so much. I understand why we condition so much. I understand why X, Y, and
Hmm.
Z. It's like, okay, there it is, dude. It's this other
Whole
person
nother
showed
world.
up. Yeah, this other person showed up in the best version of themselves,
Hmm.
and you had to fight that. And now look at you, man. Whether you won or whether you lost, you came back with your shield or on it. But what a,
Right.
what a beautiful experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You learn really quick too. Like, and usually, you compete as you're a white belt. And then that's when it's like, okay, I can't just sign up. Like, I really have to train hard for this. And then that's when you
Yeah.
really start to take it seriously. So,
Yeah, I feel that there's a test that happens at every belt. And this is something that I tell my students, right? Where I tell them what I feel that's important to compete at every belt. I feel there's a lesson at every belt. So you have your lessons as a white belt. You have
yeah.
your lessons as a blue belt. You have your lessons as a purple belt, as a
Hmm.
brown belt, as a black belt. Just because you decided not to compete at that belt doesn't mean that that lesson went away.
Right. Right.
Now you're going to have 2 lessons to learn, a blue,
Hmm.
and some people wait till they're brown belts before they start
Right.
competing. Guess what,
Right.
man? You have all these lessons to learn, and it's harder because it's a bigger humbling experience for those guys. So just get out there, man. Just get out there. If you want to do it, if your life allows you for it, just get out there and compete, man. You don't have to be like the next Mika or the next Landry Lowe or anything like that. This is your own personal story. Just go
Right.
tell it. Go compete.
Right.
Don't feel like you're representing your academy or your instructor or anything like
Good
that.
for
Just get
you.
out there. Yeah,
Good for
you
you.
shouldn't. You shouldn't feel that burden. This is for you, man. This is why your patch is on your back, right? Like
Yeah.
your team is behind you. It's not on your face or on your head.
I mean, at the end of the day, nobody cares if you lose, right?
And
Like I don't even like
nobody's
my
watching.
teammates
Yeah.
when they lose, I don't it's not like I'm like, "Oh, they suck." No. Like you admire them. No. You
Oh no,
admire them
no,
for going
no,
out
no.
there. You
You
know what
do,
I
you do.
mean? Like
Yeah,
it's
you do.
definitely
And
hard.
you teach them is like water for ducks, butt, man. You know, you
Mhm.
won, you
Yeah.
lost. It's the same, man. Get out there
Right.
and keep having
Right.
fun. You know. But
Exactly.
yeah, you have to teach people also like how to. Some people have only experienced like conditional love. You know,
Mhm.
and that's very heartbreaking because that's also one of the reasons that people don't compete. You know, like think back to like your days in school as an athlete. Your coach
Yeah.
only cared about you if you were going to put him on the stand. You know, if
Right.
you were like a struggling athlete or not one of the best or anything like that, your coach like even hated you. You're like, why are you here?
That is true. That
You
is
know,
true.
so that's the problem is that so as much as they say like, oh, you know, as much you can tell them all you want. It's like, hey, dude, I don't care. But deep down, they're like, well, I don't want to disappoint you. And you're like,
Mhm.
you're not. You know, you're
Yeah.
not. Like, it's not about disappoint. Like, I'm here as a provider. My
Yeah.
job is to provide you with the platform to improve you as a human being on and
Right.
off the mats, right through jujitsu. Dude, I don't care, man. Like, just keep growing, you know. And
Right.
I wish people would understand that better, you know. But part of that is also like not letting people slide when they're not a better version of themselves, you know. Like if your student goes out there and is not on, or they're just not trying, like you have to hold them accountable, man. So I
That
give
is
them like that look, you
100%.
know, when I'm like,
Yeah.
what are we doing, man?
Yeah.
What are we doing here, you know?
Right.
And so it's tough love. It's love and tough love, but it's
Yes.
love at the end.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we've seen you out in the AZBJJ League tournaments several times. That's why you're here today, because we want to get to know you a little bit more. But tell us how your experience has been with AZBJJL. Has it been
Well,
good?
like I said,
Hopefully, yes.
it's been incredible. It's like I said, I was there at the first uh, tournament. I have a
Yeah.
picture actually somewhere here in my academy of me in the ring about to compete against somebody that came from Vegas, from Mark Lehman's academy, Cobra Kai.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, and so that was I've been there from the very beginning, you know, through
Cool.
now as a coach, bringing my students. What I love about the league is it's not just throwing mats in a gymnasium, you know, which is what a lot of people say or do.
Mm.
You know, they want to put on a tournament, they want to put on an event because they see Gustavo doing it, right? And if Gustavo's
Right.
doing it, it's got to be easy, right? It's just
Right.
mats on the floor, you know,
Yeah.
and it's not. There's
Mm.
so much work to do. If you want your event to have value, there's an incredible amount of work that goes behind putting it together.
Absolutely.
So
And
for
it's not
me to
cheap
see
either.
it's not cheap, but it's not cheap. But you know what, man? Even if you had an endless amount of cash flow, it's a work ethic and the love behind it. So just
Absolutely.
see what we have today with the TVs and the this and the that, and you guys running around with your little iPads.
Yeah.
You know, I remember the day where like the flip card, you know, where they had to flip the
Yeah, yeah,
points, you know,
yeah,
on a card,
yeah.
you know,
Right.
and the printed brackets, you know, and
Yeah.
stuff. But all of that wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the love and the passion, and the ambition and the vision
Hmm.
that he has, and the league is willing to follow and say, "Hey, we're going to make this uh, one of the greatest events that Arizona has." You know, so and I mean, as a coach, I pick the events. That's one of the reasons that you see like all of our academies participating in it is because I need an honest assessment, my students and I need an honest assessment of what we're doing technique wise, training wise. Does that
Hmm.
make sense? I know what tournaments to go if I want team trophies and gold
Right.
in in every single match. I know where to go. But is that an honest assessment of what we're doing? You know, is that an honest assessment of the technique? Like, what am I really trying to accomplish? I'm
Right.
trying to have world champions. I'm trying to have Pan American champions. I'm trying to have national champions. The only way that that era points towards those things is having a solid participation with good data to pull from participating in AZBJJF. That is the
Yeah.
closest you're going to get to a tournament that level. And a lot of guys do that. You see a lot of guys are going to compete in at the Worlds or Pants or
Mhm.
whatever. They'll do one of you guys' tournaments first,
Yeah.
see what they need to tweak, see what they were weak, what they were weak or
Right.
what was strong, and then go into that big tournament. So I love it. I like I said, I feel that it's one of the events that provide the most value for the academies and the students.
Awesome. Well, love to hear it. Thank you for your support. Um, and hopefully, when you're all healed up, we'll see you back on the mats at AZBJJL competing. So, hopefully.
Master seven, baby, Master seven. When you guys have Master seven, I'll be there.
Okay, okay. We'll work on that.
All right, perfect.
Okay. Um, so tell us a little bit about the first time you competed. Let's hear it. Let's hear your experience,
In
the good
jiu-jitsu,
and the bad. Yes.
in jiu-jitsu. All right. So the good and the bad was this was a tournament called Desert Quest, and it was the tournament that had the most amount of academies and competitors fighting at the
Hmm.
time. At the time, that event was also put on by the guy that used to put Rage in the Cage. So we're
Okay.
talking like late '90s, early 2000s. Um, I had a we back then we didn't know how to train. Honestly, we didn't know how to train.
Yeah.
So you trained as hard as you could. You conditioned the best that you could. Um, but there was no like idea of a game plan. There was no like clear understanding of weight divisions and why
Hmm.
one would benefit you from the other. You know,
Yeah.
it was just jump into this one. This is the
Yeah.
nearest one. And then but I liked it. I liked it because, like I said, it provided us with our early steps into competition.
Hmm.
And I ended up as a two-stripe white belt. I ended up wrestling a or competing against a two-stripe blue belt. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, and his name is Edwin DeWeese, who went on to fight in the UFC. And
Oh,
an amazing,
awesome.
amazing guy, man, amazing guy. And my coach looks at me and goes, "Watch out for his spider guard."
Uh-huh.
And I look at my coach and I go, "What spider guard?" And lo and behold, I'm in a triangle like 30 seconds later. But I
Oh my
didn't tap.
God.
I didn't
Uh-huh.
tap. I may or may not have gone to sleep, and then I
Uh-huh.
woke up in this triangle, and then I passed his guard, and
Oh
then
my
repeat that a
gosh.
couple of times. So it was to me, it was just one of those things where it was like it was a great event. It was small. It was like one of the only legitimate places to compete in.
Hmm.
Um, but it was there wasn't like this deep brackets. It wasn't like today where you're like there's 30 guys in your division.
Hmm.
It's like
Right.
you're lucky to have a match or maybe two. Maybe three on a good day.
What was the biggest lesson that you learned from that very first experience?
From the very first experience, the lessons was we need to, and it's something that stayed with me through my life as a practitioner and as a coach. Is we need to do a better job of learning how to train our students, condition wise. Like it can't just be tough.
Hmm.
It can't just be slamming balls in the wall. It can't just
Right.
be this. It can't just be
Right.
that. Like there's got to be a purpose why we're doing this, and we can't be training like this every single day either. And we also can't just do it on a Sunday. So
Hmm.
like you start looking at. So I'll give you an example. JC Santana and Dr. Roger Ferguson. I don't know if you remember them.
No.
They put out early 2000. They put out a DVD that had drills for the first time.
Hmm.
So those are the two guys that introduced the concept of Tabata workouts for jiu-jitsu. That changed the entire landscape. Those guys with their
Yeah.
DVD alone changed the way jiu-jitsu academies worldwide started training. So what I learned is that there needs to be a better thought out process to training and competition.
Hmm.
So as I started preparing myself a little bit better, started learning a little bit more about drills and structuring passes
Hmm.
with pins and stuff like that. So that was one of my biggest experiences for me personally, as a person or as a competitor. Like it
Hmm.
just gave me validation that I was like, okay, man, I can do this, because that's one of the
Right.
things that you're looking for as a competitor is, do I belong in this circle? Do I belong
Right.
do I belong in this? Can I overcome this nervous? Can I overcome this
Mhm.
doubt? So yeah, that was my first experience. That was
Question
the
for
lesson
you.
I
Did
learned.
the nerves ever go away over time?
Never. No,
No.
and if they do, they're lying to you. I don't understand that the whole
Yeah.
idea of trying to look cool.
Yeah.
There is so one of the things that you need to um, recognize is that voice in your head, right?
Mhm.
That voice in your head that it's talking to you, telling you all those things. If you really pay attention to that voice, it's neither you nor your thoughts, and it's a voice from old programming, right? It's an old
Yes.
programming that you have
Yes.
in there
Yes.
from your experience as an athlete when you were little, or your first little league game, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. So you have to start learning how to observe that voice and not be affected by it. Not
I
even it's not
love
about
that.
quieting the
Yeah.
voice. Yeah, it's not even about quieting the voice. It's not even addressing the voice or anything like that. It's a voice that's going to be there forever. It's just how loud or how quiet you manage to get it.
Yes.
So but the nervousness and the excitement is always going to be there. I think that also once you recognize what this is, right? Like that little
Right.
shake before it,
You get
I
used
feel
to
that
it.
we've lost the
Yeah.
understanding. We've lost the understanding of what that is because we're so far removed from combat as a society,
Mhm.
in general, that we don't recognize what's happening to us. And ultimately, what it is like if you recognize it, it's your soul telling you, "I'm not nervous. I'm excited." I am. I've dieted. I've worked out. I've wrestled. I've fought. I've cried. I've
Mhm.
bled, and I'm 5 minutes, 40 minutes away from being released out there.
Right.
Your soul is jumping out of your chest.
Yeah.
We don't recognize what that is. So what do we call it? I'm nervous, you know?
Exactly.
So it's
It's a
one of the
big
biggest things to tell
difference.
people. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
big difference. So,
Yes.
but the sooner you can start telling people or helping people to recognize that, how you
Hmm.
feel? I'm nervous. No, you're not. You're excited.
Yeah.
Think about everything that you did to get here. And then
Yeah.
they're like, oh yeah, I am excited. All right, there you go. And it's a
I
huge
really
change in
love
performance.
that you said that because that is so true. And I even apply that to my own life because you can apply that to real world experiences throughout your life too. And that's why, jujitsu and life go hand in hand because you learn so many things. And that is 100%, like 100% true, what you just
Yeah.
said.
Well, and I feel that that's truly your duty as a practitioner, right? And
Yeah.
as a coach is to show people how to see the world through jiu-jitsu, you
Yes.
know? So
Yes.
that's ultimately like that's it, man. It's like medals don't mean anything if your
Right.
life's in shambles, you know? Like it's
Absolutely.
so that's what I love
Awesome.
about jiu-jitsu.
So, what are your requirements for like a student to compete? Like, do you have any requirements for your students, or like, what do you tell
Mhm.
them?
Yeah, I want to see commitment. I want to see commitment. I want to see their ambition match their work ethic, and their
Hmm.
work ethic match their ambition, right?
Yeah.
Um, because I've had more success with people that come to me and they go, "Hey, man, I love jujitsu. I never want to compete." 8 months later, that dude is winning gold. You know,
Right.
versus the guy that comes in and he goes, I want to be a world champion. I want to take over the world. I want to see my enemies brought before me and hear the lamentations. And you're like, oh, you do that. You
Yeah.
want that? Okay, perfect. Well, let me show you what's going to take to get that, right? And then you see them crumble. And then you're like, oh, you want that, but you're not willing to work for that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that's that bursting of the bubble, like when you see yourself, what you are right now, um compared to what you thought you were. That leads to the student quitting. And we're not pushing them away, like to the contrary, we're offering them all the tools to become what you want, but you thought you were there already, man, which is the
Right.
problem.
Yeah.
So my requirement is dedication for our students. If they're going to compete, I want them 4 times a week here. I need them 4 times a week, no less.
Hmm.
You don't have to, it doesn't have to be at red practice every single day, but I do need you here. I need you drilling. I need you understanding. I need you absorbing. I need you pushing yourselves. Um, I
So you really
usually,
evaluate your students before they even sign up. Like you really try to coach them. Like this is what you need to do.
yeah. I usually wait for them to have, depending on their background, I'll
Mhm.
try to have them at one or two stripes
Mhm.
before they compete, because let's be honest, like that's usually
Right.
what people wait for before they
Yeah.
compete, right? They're in
Yeah.
the middle of the rank or towards the end of the rank before they start
Yeah.
competing, right?
Right.
So I'll put them in that regard, right? But at the same time, if I have a student that is a little bit hard headed, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm like, hey, 10 burpees. And they go, six, you know? Why the other four, man? You know, and then you're like,
Right.
okay, okay. You know what? You should sign up for a tournament, you know? And
Right. Right.
then that's usually like that usually opens up the conversation for us to be like, okay, now you get it. And they're like, oh
Right.
yeah, I get it, you know?
It's like,
So
all right,
as far
here's
as
the anchor call.
so but once you we do camps for every tournament, right? So that allows the mindset to shift right from a regular
Mhm.
practice to now we say, okay, we're 7 weeks out, time to
Yeah.
start working, right? So in those 7 weeks, I'll try to start addressing individually the students and say, okay, you're great on top, you're a turtle on the bottom, you're upside down, you know. So and you know what to do, but you're panicking, right? So we'll work with them at a psychological level. You know, my wife's an amazing a hypnotherapist coach. She does like a lot of different stuff to help the students be calm on the mats and put them in a good place
It's
where they can learn.
awesome.
Because a lot of people have a negative relationship with learning, you know, and you see it
Uh-huh.
all the time. Like you start talking and you start showing the move, and you just see them go, I'm not gonna get this. This is gonna be terrible. I'm
Yeah.
gonna fail. I'm gonna fail as soon as I start. They're not
Yeah.
even listening anymore, you know? So
Right.
that's another thing where you as a teacher, you have to start changing the relationship with
Mm-hmm.
learning, you know? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's what I'll do. Like I said, I'll require about two stripes, 1 2 stripes, depending on the background. And then
Yeah.
as the weeks progress, you know, we'll start looking at what they're good at, you know, keep doing that, and then what we need to improve, you know. And and then you go out there and you test yourself, you know, and then you
Mm-hmm.
see what you could have done better, and you grow from there, you know. It's important to not uh I heard this a long time ago, and I believe it's so true, man. It's like, dude, nobody cares that you're a black belt, you know. The
Yeah.
only guy that cares that they beat you when you're like a blue belt is the dude that it's like on a double wide, you know,
Yeah.
drinking a Corona, and sees you succeed, you know, or sees you succeed, and they're like, I beat him when we were blue, you know.
Yeah.
That's the only
Yeah.
person that's gonna care, you know.
Right.
Like a true person that is in love with jiu-jitsu and gets what we're trying to do is gonna cheer for you, regardless of whether you beat him or or you know you beat them,
Mm-hmm.
or they beat you. Like that's a beautiful thing of the community. Like everybody cheers for each other, you know. So
Absolutely. Do you offer competition classes or do you kind of just like run your classes the same?
no, we offer a competition class, um, but I'll switch it around and catch certain people that I know are trying to avoid that. Um, you know, we're like,
Yeah.
and it's a joke, you know, because like it's a joke where they're like, oh, it must be Tuesday comp class, you know, and I'm like,
Yeah.
well, you know, there's certain people out here that haven't been to our Thursday comp class. So guess what? Comp class could be any day,
That
you
is
know.
so funny. I love that.
You have to catch them. You have
Interesting
to catch them, you
strategy.
know. Yeah, you have to catch them. So yeah, it's on the schedule. We have days that are more drill
Uh-huh.
heavy, you know.
Uh-huh.
Drills are killers. So
Yeah.
we have days that are more drill heavy. We have days that are more rolling heavy. We
Hmm.
have days that I have a class that's a review class where it's going to be super chill, super relaxed. We're going to do a quick little warm up, and we're going to hit everything that we've been covering during the week
Nice.
or even the month, you know. And then
Yeah.
because it's so much more relaxed, people feel more at ease at asking questions, you know. And
Hmm.
then you can start showing some details that you might have, you know, just flown over, you know, where
Right.
it's but yeah, we offer different classes. Different classes have different themes throughout the week, you know. And the thing as a coach that you have to evaluate, like, you know, if your comp class is on Thursday, you know, are they beat up by Thursday? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so do you need to switch it? Do you need to make it, you know, all of a sudden Monday comp class? You
Yeah.
just surprise them, you know, try to
Nice.
catch
Love
everybody.
that. Love that. How about like, so you know the AZBJJ League follows the IBJJF rules. Do you talk to your students about that and like the rule set? How do
Yep,
you do it with the
yep.
kids too? Like, yeah,
With
that
the
has to be.
kids, you have to with the kids you have to make it more about like absolute positions. With with the adults, you can get more into like micro transitions, micro positions, micro
Mhm.
setups, and they'll understand it within the big concept of the move, right? But with kids, it's like it's very much about you know side control,
Yeah.
mount, knee on
Yeah.
belly, back. Keep it simple, you know.
So do you think that they understand the rule set at all, like the number system or like the point
If
system?
you can teach them, if you can teach them, like I'll teach them, because they, it's. I think this is where like instant gratification could work for you, right? So where like you tell them it's like, hey, you did this move and that's great. How many points is that? Two, and everybody starts recognizing that it's 2 points, right?
Right.
And you're like, that's great. But if you do this, that's this many. And everybody lights up and they're like,
Yeah.
I want this many.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
start teaching them where you're like, and then you're watching the kids roll and you go, hey, Steve, that was great. That was this many.
yeah,
And they're like, yes. So
yeah.
yeah, you can teach with the kids where it's like kind of like a little playing game where you teach them
Yeah,
like you can get more if you do this move, don't do this move.
yeah,
But I feel that as a competitor, um, if you're a true good competitor, you will understand the rules and you have to understand the rules because what who plays a game that they don't understand? It
right.
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But you hear some people have a built-in excuse because they're like, oh, I didn't even know the rules, man. I didn't know I could do that. Or I didn't know, I didn't know this was this. I didn't know this was
Mhm.
that. And it's just a built-in excuse. And I'm like, oh, you
Yeah.
just have that in your pocket just in case you lose. But I mean, it's as a true testament to knowing the rules. Is like if one of my competitors is tied and I go, hey, we're not going to get points. I need an advantage.
Mhm.
Do you know how to get an advantage
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
the position that you're in? Do you know how to create an advantage from there? You know,
Mhm.
and that is what separates the champions
Yeah.
from
You got to
the
know how to
from the
play the
competitors.
game. Absolutely.
Exactly. Like, like there's no asterisk. I always tell people the story. I think it was Andre Galvao 2017 in the absolute division. He won by sitting behind the guy with double lapels, and he just sat there. And the gentleman that he's fighting was so much bigger and stronger than him that
Mhm.
Andre knew that if he jumped on his back, he was going to end up on the bottom. So he stayed behind the guy some turtle, and Andre would grab the lapel and then run him sideways to where he almost like put him in side control.
Yeah.
And then he will let him get back to his knees. So the ref, every time, you
Yeah.
know? So the score is 0-0 with like 7 advantages.
Wow.
What a show of IQ.
Yeah.
Would you
Yeah.
even have thought of that? You
Right.
know?
Right.
So, but there's no asterisk, right? And that year it shows him as the absolute champion. Well, there's no asterisk on how you win. It's just
Mhm.
it's an
Mhm.
IQ test. So yeah, I
Absolutely.
think it's important that people know the rules. But it's
Yeah.
important for the coaches to teach them the rules, understand the rules, and then understand how to apply them to your role.
Yeah.
Like where to get an advantage, where to
What
get point.
about weight classes? Like how do you guide your students with that?
Um,
Like
yeah,
cutting
that's
weight
that
like
my
that.
wrestlers are like the hardest ones with that because there's a thing in wrestling where like the lighter you can get, the better, right?
Yeah.
And that's not always the case. There's 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 three weights. There's the weight that you walk around at. That's you're not competing at that weight, right?
No.
And
Yeah.
then there's a weight that you're excellent at, that your athleticism is on point, your brain is firing, you're rested, your muscles respond, your
Mhm.
IQ, your mind is in a beautiful connection with your body, and you can just go through your entire bracket and be okay, right? That's your fighting weight. And then there's always another weight that you can make, but just because you can make it doesn't mean that your body knows how to move at that weight, you
Mhm.
know? And not everybody understands that because they can make that weight doesn't mean that they move at that weight. You would have to stay at that weight for a long time for your body to rewire itself and start fighting at that. I'll give you an example. I compete at the 222 division, right? I could make the 208 division,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't be able to move like a 208 fighter. Those guys would be dancing around me. I
Yeah.
would be my body. I am fast for the 222 division,
Right.
but my body doesn't know how to move like a 208, and it's a complete different level of athleticism. So I
Right.
would have to spend a lot of time at 208 to be able to learn how to move at
I
that,
have never thought about it like
requiring
that, but
right.
it makes a lot of sense. It really does. Because also, like, your body
Yeah,
gets used to things. It's not like you're gonna change things all of a sudden and then that's the new
yeah.
thing, you
You
know?
made the weight. Congratulations. You're still not wired to do that.
Right.
And then it's choosing that
Right.
also. Like, did you make it? How did you get there? Are you dehydrated?
Hmm.
How's your nutrition? Do you just starve
Yeah.
yourself to make that division?
Yeah.
Versus a guy that it's like having sushi the night before and makes the weight. You know,
Right.
so so as far as guiding our fighters through that, we go over weights. You have to support because these are also adults, so these are not like high school kids. So you can be like, you're this.
Yeah.
Um, and they're going to experiment through those weights, and you can give them like cautionary tales of like, hey, if you do this, this is what's going to go wrong with this.
Right.
and
Right.
and then because you're like your Papa Manny, they go, what do you know? They're like, bah, but I'll show you, old
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they're out there and they made the weight, but they're like,
Yeah. They're like
are you
zombies.
okay?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Your match is over here. Thank you. You know, and you get out
Right.
there and their body is like shut down,
Yeah.
and then you're like, well, okay, what did we learn?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's just helping them. I think ultimately it's helping them fight their fighting weight, helping them
Mhm.
that their weight that they're walking around at that might be comfortable, but fighting weight is different. And then there's another way that you can make that is not where you want to be as a fighter. So
Mhm.
it's a lot of learning. I think this is where also me as an academy instructor or academy owner, you got to have your resources right where um, you got to have a nutritionist in hand, right? Where it's available to your students, where your student wants to make a lower weight bracket, but wants to remain strong, wants to do all this stuff. I know who to send them. I know who to send if they need to count macros. Gabe from Sharks. Like I don't even do the math. I'm like, hey, go talk to Gabe. He'll help you
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
macros. Um, Gabe Cordova and his brother are incredible at doing that. If it's more on like a diet for different reasons, like performance and stuff like that, we send them to Duke Nutritioning. So you got to have those resources because you got to be honest with yourself and not try to hold the cards of everything fight related.
Mhm.
I can't be like, I'll write the diet for you. No, no, no. Go talk to those people, man. You want to know how to choke somebody? I got you, man. You want a book to read
That's
so you
my
can improve your
expertise.
mind? I got you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know these things, but
Right.
I'm not going to try to hold the cards in every aspect of the fight game.
Love that. Love that. So, how do you mentally prepare your students for a competition? Is that something you do, you said your wife does that a little bit too, right?
Yeah, so she'll do. It's she works with some UFC fighters. She works with some
Nice.
corporations, and she'll do what's called RTT, rapid transformation therapy, which is a form of hypnosis. But then she's doing all the other forms, which is it's called Psych K.
Hmm.
K. And so those are tools that we use for our students to remove some mental blocks, right? And but not all students are open to opening that vault, right? And but we still need to grow, right? So for me, the mindset that has been the most rewarding for my personal life and that I see pay off the most is stoicism. So I'll start introducing my students to concepts of stoicism at the end of class. I'll quote a phrase from Marcus Aurelius and digest it for them. So I call it like planted like little mind seeds. Like I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you this little story about Marcus Aurelius and his life and how that applies to what you just experienced,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to put it right here, and then I'll send you on your way. And it's up to you whether that dries or you nurture that. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so stoicism is a very important tool for me to make my students be able to go through a role and be present, right? Because I think that also you see that a lot where some people are winning. Some people can only win when they're winning.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
the second the most smaller thing goes wrong, Ah man, I'm down to points. There's like 3 minutes left. It's over. I lost. You can't have that. You need that mindset that is just bulletproof. So we'll work a lot with drills and positions and scenarios here in the academy to show, number one, show people how to endure a tough position. And then
Mhm.
number two, obviously they already have the tools, how to start putting those tools together and how to fight through those negative scenarios, right? All while, being supportive, but being demanding, and just creating an atmosphere where they, for a lot of people, this is the first time that they're surrounded by people that just truly want to see them succeed, and it's completely alien to them. So it takes a while. It takes a little bit to nurture these people into like bringing their guard down and let this
Right.
new thoughts go enter their mind. So trading scenarios, pits, positional rolling, uh, putting them in negative situations where they're like, okay, the worst thing that could have happened, it's already here.
Right.
You're going to start a mount. The score is 6-0. You have 2 minutes left and go. And what do you
Nice.
do?
Yeah.
And you see them, and you have to let them go through it a couple of times on their own. You see them go, why are we doing this? You know,
Yeah.
it's 6-0 and there's 2 minutes left. And, here's an armbar, take it, get me out of this.
Yeah.
And then but you force him to stay in the fight, and then you start nurturing them to know you could do it, man.
Yeah.
You could,
Yeah.
even if you don't win, don't die on the mount. Escape, put him in guard, die trying to sweep him. That's all I want to see. And then once they're capable of doing that, then it's always this thought, right? It's like, I didn't know I could do that. Huh? What else could I do? What else am I capable of that it's not within my realm of possibilities?
Yeah. I
And
can see
then
why your guys are so dangerous now.
it's steroids,
So
man. It's
awesome.
autism and steroids. It's in the water here in Tucson.
That is so cool. I didn't know you were so insightful. This is so nice to like just get to know you a little bit more. So,
I'm
uh,
just a big nerd, man.
awesome. All right, so we're on our last question here. So, if you could give somebody one piece of advice, going into competition for the very first time, what would you say to them?
Um, you're entitled to the effort, not to the result. That's the piece of advice I would give them. I think that we are too result driven,
Hmm.
you know, where you tell somebody, I'm doing jujitsu. Are you are you a black belt? And you're like, no, dude, I just started. And they're like, well, my 12-year-old kid is a black belt. Why are you not? So, and then you tell people that you're competing and that you want to compete. And they're like, are you going to be in the UFC?
Yeah,
And you're like,
yeah, yeah,
literally, my first tournament is a white belt, dude. Like,
yeah,
no. And then
yeah,
they're just like, then why do it?
yeah.
So I think that if people can just go into the tournaments and just be in love with the person that they had to become to endure the training camp, show up, put your gi on, get in the bullpen, which is the bullpen is the worst. Is when your eye like
Yeah.
sizing people up. It's like, is this doing my division? Too big. Doing my division? Too young.
Yeah, yeah.
Is this doing my division? Oh, it's a woman. No, okay. So dude, just be within yourself, be in your thoughts, be in your peace, and just be happy with the person you had to become to endure that. And let go of the results. You're only entitled to the work ethic that you put behind your preparation. And if the
Mhm.
gods smile upon you and you win your medals, and you win your matches, learn from those things. Learn from those things. A victory is meaningless if you don't learn from it.
Mhm.
That's why they say that you learn so much more from your defeats. You can learn from both, but learn to fall in love with the process. That would be my advice. I think that
Love
if you
that.
remove the expectations of winning, you would have so many more competitors doing it.
Manuel, the jiu-jitsu philosopher. You should
Just
write
a
a book
nerd,
or
man.
something, or
Just a
like
nerd.
start a podcast. You're
I
so
know. I buy too many books. I buy too many books. I don't have time for any of that.
good. That's fair. Awesome. Okay. Well, that's really all I have. So let us know where we can find you on social media.
Daimyo Academy on Instagram and Facebook. Manuel Flores Daimyo on Instagram. We post techniques. We talk about philosophy in some of those videos.
Nice.
We talk about I use my Instagram to share both funny memes and quotes, philosophy quotes that help us overcome our that voice in our head, you
Yeah.
know. So give me a follow, and if there's anything that I can do for you guys, whoever's watching this, guys and girls and kids, just don't hesitate to reach out and let's have some fun.
You crushed this interview. Thank you so
Oh,
much for sharing
I'm
all your
sweating so
knowledge.
much.
What? Are you kidding me? That was great. Thank you so much. And thank you for supporting the Arizona Jiu-Jitsu League and keep crushing it. You're just
Nah,
smashing
you're amazing. You always
it.
do great. Thank you for having me, and
Awesome.
thanks for the leagues for doing this. So
Cool.
thank you, ma'am.